Great. Morning. Right, this is my last talk at a SCOMS conference, but we'll come to the tiers bit later. Right, InfoComm. Where are we with InfoComm? Right, one of the things that came out of the survey was that some of the newer member institutions didn't know that much about the scheme, and interestingly, with the number of new members here for the first time, just to give a little bit of a background and a catch-up on where we are and how we got here. So the InfoComm group membership scheme started on the 1st of January 2014, and all SCOMS members are members of InfoComm, and all member institution staff can get a log-on for InfoComm and can actually use the training materials. So at Edinburgh, for example, not only are my staff in my central department logging onto InfoComm and using the online resources, but also staff doing related AV and IT work in schools and other units are also using the material as well. So I think it's a key thing that it's not just for your department. Anybody in the university can use it as long as they're a member of staff. Students actually can't use it, but all members of staff can. When we started the scheme, we committed to 2 years with the possibility of an extension to a third. So at the minute we're 18 months into the scheme, so we're at the halfway point right now. And right now, I mean, it is a significant investment for us putting on ex-treasurer's hat. Currently, in the second and third year, on the current membership numbers we have at the minute, we're investing about 24,000 a year, so it is a real serious amount of money that we're investing on your behalf. But what have we been doing as part of this 18 months? Well, we've been influencing InfoComm. I've been a member of the UK advisory board for a couple of years and really trying to steer InfoComm in what it's doing. We've also done editing input into documents that InfoComm have produced. We provided editing into the AVIT infrastructure guidelines for higher education, which predominantly came out of the US, but we certainly worked hard to what I might describe as de-US it and turn it more into a UK or a global document as well. Dave and myself were members of the ISE Education Advisory Board, suggesting topics and rating topics for use in the education stream at ISE in Amsterdam. And we also worked to try to make sure that you could take advantage of some of the more, if you like, tailored and higher education things. And I mean, one of the benefits from that was that we got the extra session by Kramer on BYOD dropped in as well, and the guy ran that twice. And we've also got members across the country commenting on a new technology managers course that InfoComm are currently setting up at the minute. So we do have influence, but as InfoComm keeps saying, they are a membership organisation and they need the membership to contribute, and certainly we've worked hard on that. On the other side, from just using InfoComm, Jings, we've got 100 SCOMS members or members of InfoComm, but there's only 329 UK members, so we are a huge slab of that. So we're a huge slab of users, and therefore we should have reasonable influence with InfoComm from a UK perspective, which I believe we've built up over a number of years. Lots of use of online training that we'll see from some of the survey results later. We also piloted the CTS bursary scheme this year, offered 20 bursaries to try to kickstart uptake of CTS and let people, if you like, try it out without having to go and get the £220 fee from their institution. And again, the education programme at ISE, I don't think heavily used this year, but I think something we really want to build on to make it an extra strand of ISE, but I think one of the key things out of that is I think you need to go for more than 2 days. But that will mean, I think, Treasurer's Hat, ex-Treasurer's Hat, that you will have to try to get some money from your institution to try to add to the SCOM's money to try to get that extra time out of it and build it into something bigger. Okay, so where are we now? Well, we're 18 months into the scheme. The CTS bursary scheme survey was completed with a bit of prodding from the man with the email taser. The InfoComm general scheme survey was completed, again with a bit of help from the taser, and a decision will be required by your new executive fairly soon as to whether to go with year 3 of InfoComm, which would start from the 1st of January next year. So looking at the 2 surveys that we did in slightly more detail, and starting with the CTS bursary scheme, in both of these surveys, the rating scheme was 1 to 4. 1 was negative and 4 was positive. It was a 4-point scheme, so that psychologically you couldn't just say, well, I'll go for 3 because it's in the middle. So it was to try to at least force everybody to say, is it positive, is it negative? So on that, 48% of responses on average across the questions in the CTS bursary scheme rated on average 4, but 88% of responses rated 3 or 4. So 88% were positive. However, the main issues, if you looked at the detail, and hopefully somebody looked at the detailed results that I sent out to the list a week or so ago in their homework pack, the main issues that dragged the score down were issues with exam centres, and InfoComm basically outsourced their exam centres to places like Pearson VUE or Pitman. Exam scheduling, the difficulty of scheduling exams, because you're supposed to be able to schedule it with 3 to 4 weeks, but actually some people were finding it was taking 6 to 8 weeks to actually get a slot at their local exam centre. And the fact that there was still some North American content. Now, all these have been fed back to InfoComm, and they've been doing some further investigation on the exam centres, etc. And we're having some discussions with them on what we do with the North American content. Although I believe when you sit the exam, there are comments boxes in the exam that if you think some of the questions were actually not relevant to the area you're in, then you could put that comment in. But I think we need some further discussions with InfoComm on that. But one of the key things that came back, we asked for what I would describe as general feedback, and I think this was the comment that pleased me most, because in many ways it actually touched on certainly what I had hoped would come out of the scheme, was the thing that it gave this person the nudge to actually do it, because they'd thought about it, they'd wanted to do it, but actually needed the nudge. The fact that they didn't have to go to their management and ask for the money to do it, somebody else was going to pay, was good. And the other one was, at the end was, I had certainly hoped that this would generate wider interest among institutions, and it's the second parties, and at least one of my colleagues is planning to do so too. So I think this was actually one of the real positive comments. Most of the negative comments, as I say, were about the exam centre facilities, the difficulty scheduling the exam, and actually some American content. Now, what I just want to do is pause there so I can stop speaking for a minute and just ask a couple. We are lucky that we have a couple of people that did the bursary scheme in the room, Dave and Fred, so I just want to ask them to say a little bit about how they felt it went for them, what they think they've gained from it, and where they'll go from now. So if we could have Dave first. And then Fred's just behind him, so you won't have to run that far.
We took advantage of the scheme, and I actually did the CTS training myself. I was using it as a process to evaluate the benefit of the whole scheme for the rest of my technicians. It introduced things that it introduced new aspects of the AV industry that I didn't necessarily look at and thought were necessarily relevant. But now looking back, I think it does become, because it gave me a wider picture. And the way we're going to look at using the scheme now is that all my technicians will go through the scheme, and all my AV assistants will go through the scheme. And we're also going to offer it up. We have a number of positions as well, desktop technicians that do first line AV support. They will go through the training probably without doing the exam. But I think from from our perspective, that wasn't me, I didn't write that, but we were looking at the scheme, but the university never would support the funding to go into it. And as part of this, because it came as a free gratis as part of the membership, I think it's helped. And one of the things now is that people, because I've changed my signature block, if anybody gets an email from me and it says CTS and I use the logo with it, it gives and adds a little bit of credibility, because there's not a lot of AV professional qualifications that are recognised by people out there. And I think that's the other thing, is if you're in a combined and converged AV IT department, it's having that extra amount of credibility for the AV element. The IT, I think, sometimes look not down, but they don't necessarily regard the AV side of it as high as what they are. And that's how we've used it, and that's how we're going to continue to use it. And I am actually, as I say, even though I didn't write that, I am now starting to work towards CTSD. Fred.
Thank you, Dave. I've been an AV technician for 22 years, and I came from a photographic background, and so I didn't really have any formalized learning. So I've just learnt by doing the job. You know, as the services requested, I figured out how to do it, but there was not an easy way to measure my performance apart from looking at all the things that have been done. So I found CTS. It was very useful to, they have online training, CTS Prep, which is 433 pages. And it's very easy to access, just one page at a time if you've got 10 minutes. And I had a lot of that knowledge was there that I'd done by doing the job. But it sort of gave a structure, sort of like a formal structure, and it sort of showed that I did actually have all those skills there. So doing the exam, I think it was very positive to do, and I'm planning, like Dave, to do the CTSD, and also if there's restructuring in a department for managers that don't specifically know what your job is, to be able to see that you've got certified, an international certified qualification is really useful. And the other technicians in our department, they're planning to do as well. And there's CTSI as well. So yeah, I found it was very useful. And if there wasn't the bursary scheme, I probably wouldn't have done it. Just, there was because there was a deadline, the money was there, it had to be used. I found that, it was that little nudge to get on and do it. So yeah, I found it very useful. And I found that the InfoComm training materials, it wasn't too Americanized. It was, there weren't any videos really, it was all just little sort of nuggets of pages that you could go through. So I found it very useful. And also the other benefit is when you're working with stakeholders, other partners in designing spaces, they are more likely to have more respect on what you're saying, because they see, like you're saying, I haven't actually done it yet, but I'm planning to put it on my email signature, that when you're talking about screen size or distance or planning a room, the fact that you're bringing information that is validated in terms of distances or whatever, means that they're more likely to listen to what you're saying. It's rather than it just being your subjective viewpoint, it's actually something that you can even refer them to. Well, you could put a link to, the InfoComm pages, because anyone can access that. Thank you.
Thanks, Fred. That's really helpful. So that's the glowing, positive, feel-good side. The negative side, because there's always a negative side. 20 bursaries were awarded, despite numerous applications of the email taser and reminders to candidates and institutional reps. Only 17 institutions completed within the deadline. At best, 18 will eventually complete. So, in many ways, that's an absolute waste. That in effect, 2 bursaries that were available were taken up, and basically the people that were supposed to do the work and sit the exam, in my best description, didn't bother. Because it's free, ex-treasurer's hat, it doesn't lack value. And really, to a certain extent, we have seen the same with ISE places, where institutions apply for and take ISE places and then don't turn up for a number of reasons, sometimes just because they don't turn up, or sometimes because they've had a better offer and a supplier's going to take them, and therefore they don't have to go to 3 presentations and spend the time on that, so they basically just don't turn up, don't tell anybody they don't turn up. So, I mean, I would just make a plea that institutional reps have a responsibility to manage, monitor, and ensure that when things are applied for, their staff actually do it and turn up and use it. We have resources to spend and give out, but really we don't want that to be wasted. And as I said, because it's free, it doesn't lack value. Now, the 2 institutions who will not complete have been sent a bill so that we can recover the costs. So financially, we are not, if you like, disadvantaged, but that was 2 places in the bursary scheme that some other keen technician somewhere could have taken advantage. So that's a real waste, so moan up over. Now, moving on to the InfoComm scheme survey in general. 67 institutions responded, which I think out of the 100 was bloody good for an online survey. And the results showed that people's plans, where they had either made use of or planned to use InfoComm resources, this is going down in descending order from online courses 72, the AV Technologist exam, that's just a simple online exam that's not certified. CTS exam, over half either used or intending to use, down, but when we get to classroom courses, 18%, and I think that just shows the difficulties we all face on releasing people and subsistence and meals and whatever else, so that didn't really surprise me at all. 34% on webinars, and then when it comes to roundtables and social events, then it sort of fell off a cliff. I suspect predominantly because InfoComm tends to do their roundtables and social events in London, which for the vast majority of us, drinks cravens would cost a fortune to get to, and I think that's probably something that my successor needs to discuss with InfoComm, is regional events and things like that, although I know they've tried that in the past and didn't get a good uptake, but when they tried it in the past was way before there were 100 members from SCOMS, so I think that's, if you like, work in progress. Again, on the scheme, it was, the rating scheme was 1 to 4, with 1 was negative, 4 was positive. So on the, how did we rate the quality of the training material? 34% rated 4, the top score, and 93% rated 3 or 4. So vastly positive in that scale. On has it met your expectations? A bit higher there with 45% on rated 4 and again 85% rated 3 or 4, so well, if maybe they had low expectations, but it met them anyway. On usefulness, a bit lower on the full rated 4, but again roughly the same on 3 and 4, so they're all about that 85% mark. And finally, how would you rate the continuation? So it was really trying to get that thing back about, do you think we should move into year 3? 52% rated 4, and again 85% rated 3 or 4. This is a sort of mix of the comments that came in the free forum boxes. A little bit again about the US terminology, positiveness. Content is mostly good, though the VLE platform is terrible and often doesn't work at all. Yes, we have certainly fed that back to InfoComm, and the feedback of InfoComm is yes, they are reworking their website at the minute and would expect to launch a new website by the end of the year, and they absolutely know that that is an issue that they are seriously investing in. And the final one, the courses are an excellent start for our modern apprenticeships, or basically someone new to the industry, that it gives that track, which is really what we spoke about when we started the scheme. So, where to now? Well, there is a question coming up soon, and this is really these two surveys and this discussion that I'm going to open up in a minute is really the start of that discussion as to whether we actually take up the third year option from the end of the year. There's a question whether we repeat the CTS bursary scheme for another year, whether people think that would be helpful to try to build on that. And also, given that we're 30% of the UK InfoComm membership, what additional things do we want to do with InfoComm? Because if we are that over a third of the membership, then we need to have influence. I think certainly the feedback to the surveys that came back were that InfoComm were certainly very pleased with the engagement, they were pleased with the input we'd put into a number of things, and really wanted to build on that. So there is serious work for my successor in taking that relationship forward, but I think in many ways we might be actually pushing it quite an open door and positiveness from the other side, and I think there's great benefit that the membership can gain, and I think all the thing that Dave said earlier are the key things in that, and recognition and status and the badge on your emails and things like that, and all the things we've talked about, how do we raise the status of the AV technician against others. So I just really now want to open it to discussion and feedback for comments about InfoComm, but I think it would be useful. Dave and Fred spoke about the, if you like, the online CTS stuff, but there are classroom courses as well. So I know that, where are we? Paul at the back and Ben did the CTSD boot camp, so I think it would really be useful if we get some feedback from them just before we open it up. Who's got the mic? Do you want to give it to Paul?
Yeah, Ben and I did the CTSD bootcamp course, which was 3 days in March, 3 days in April, and 3 days in May in Hemel Hempstead. So we had the joy of lots of time in hotels there. The course was excellent, really, I think. I was surprised how much, for those who are doing the CTS prep course that you talked about. Also, one little warning on that CTS prep online course. I did the CTS just back in December and worked through that prep course. The moment you click on the final page, you lose access to that course of those 490 whatever pages. Yeah, you can sign it, but I fed that back to them. I thought that was quite a pain, because actually I clicked it like the day before, and I obviously wanted to revise for the exam on the final few hours, and to be denied access to the thing you've just been working through was a bit frustrating. But yeah, you can sign up again. You're right. In terms of the CTSD course, there were certainly aspects of the US-centric bit which were a problem, but they had attempted to address that. For example, we had probably half a day, if not more than half a day, on power supply and electricity and circuits, and they brought in a UK InfoComm guy who was a qualified electrician, so that basically he could correct everything the American guy said and translate it for us. I mean, it did throw, the instructor had a whole exercise about the number of circuits that you need for an AV installation, and we just don't work that way. We put in the right circuit for the AV, we don't just add in more and more, which seems to be what the Americans want to do. So the course was very good, yet to know, because I haven't taken the exam, whether it actually really works. But yeah, it was an intense learning experience, really. Yeah. Any more, Ben, to add to that?
I think after the course, anecdotally, we heard that a couple of people that had taken it had found that the actual exam was much more maths heavy and maths intense than the actual boot camp had been, even though we did go through all the equations for everything from PAGNAG through to light levels and what have you. I've been in organisations that have been a member of InfoComm for a lot longer than I've been a member of SCOMS. And they are getting a lot better, I think, at becoming kind of more and more UK-centric. I think it's literally just a case of the more numbers you have, the more of an influence you have. And I really do like the fact that the AV industry is starting to have a kind of a professional qualification. I don't see why we should be different to, having the RICS qualification or the REBA qualification. What we do is seriously complicated and getting more and more complicated. And I think the problem that I kind of observe is that people still think you just push overhead projectors from rooms to rooms. And the industry and the technology and the knowledge base has changed so dramatically over the last 10, 15, 20 years that I don't think necessarily the people that employ us have entirely caught up with that. And I think the professional qualification that you can put on your email or what have you, I think that's a significant kind of indicator to them of what you need to know to be good at your job. Myself and my friends that work at the Royal Society of Medicine, the Royal College of Surgeons, some of the other places in London, we actually asked InfoComm to arrange for a guy to come over to do practical training with our technicians. Because I still think the biggest problem with all the AV courses that I know, ever since the City and Guild stopped in, 1998 or whatever it was, there's no hands-on AV training. You can sit there and you can learn the equations for how sound works or what have you, but there's nothing better than actually having a sound desk and a pair of speakers and, well, yeah, exactly. So, I come out of a live event drama background, which is how I got into audiovisual. So we actually got together as a group of like-minded institutions within London and paid for a course where technicians from all the institutions were able to sit with an InfoComm trainer that was flown over and actually demonstrate practically with audiovisual equipment. And I don't know whether that for me is probably the most important thing that InfoComm could do that they don't, is actual proper hands-on training. And going back to the presentation before, there's only so much benefit you can get from online and from sitting in a room looking at PowerPoint. You really want to get your hands on the equipment because it's still a hands-on job. So that's my kind of take on it, I think.
Yeah, I think they will do anything you want as long as you've got pockets with money at the bottom, and I think it is always that difficulty for us all. And how do we release staff and send them places? We in Edinburgh got round that by using a lecturer from a local FE college who ran a video production course and used to be a sound supervisor in broadcast television before he went there. And he came in and did 2 days of hands-on training with a sound desk for our technicians on how to do things properly, and that was really the only way we could get round that, by bringing in the fact that he was in a college in Edinburgh meant it was actually really cost effective. But yeah, I absolutely agree, especially when you get into the audio side. You can't actually do it without sitting in a room and behind a desk and doing stuff. And I think, yeah, that's really good feedback.
One of the, I was working as part of the advisory group for ISE last year. One of the things I put forward was for one of the training sessions to be on the practical application. On the practical applications of EDID. And it was a suggestion I put forward. It's one of the ones that they took up to do that, so that you can physically see what happens when you get it wrong, and how you can, what have you done? And how you can manipulate the system to suit your benefit. But as you say, it's all right to say to people, well, if you do this and do that, but until you physically see that in action, as I say, that's one of the things, and that's one of the influences that we can have with InfoComm, by saying this is what we need to see.
I think part of that, the other one that's interesting is, and it's something that I don't think has been, how you describe, taken up as much as it has in the version in the States, is the adding that training to the conference. Or the exhibition, and it was interesting to hear the colleague from CCUMC saying that they put, if you like, workshops and sessions before the conference, so if people are travelling, then they can take account of that. And I mean, I think that's something to develop with InfoComm and ISE, as to actually what they're doing, because if you're there, and then basically it's just an extra night's accommodation added on, then there's options there. Right, any other comments, thoughts, good, bad, indifferent experiences? Tessa? Mike's coming your way, hang on a minute.
I was thinking about the CCUMC idea of tagging it onto the ISE days, and I know a couple of years ago we had someone from the lowlands, was it Utrecht? And I wonder if there's something we could do with one of the universities, Amsterdam way, that would maybe allow us to tag those days onto ISE. It's just a thought. And also I'm missing our European cousins anyway.
Yeah. Anybody else? Nigel?
One of the things that concerns me about this is that we're seeing we can talk about it all we want in this environment, and we can talk about training, we understand the benefits of that, but the people who are holding the purse strings and things are tight are becoming more and more reticent about people being away, spending money on training. But worse than that, I've certainly seen it in the last couple of years, not just in the field in which I'm working, but in other fields where some of the senior managements at the strategic level they don't recognise skill sets, and that's a real battle to get over. And I think that this is why this is so important, this bursary scheme, because you've got they're not gimmies, they're not going to do it, and that's why SCOMS has got to keep pushing the boundaries here to get these qualifications recognised, because I think that we've got this thing where people think that some people think that everybody can do everything. Well, they can't. It's A, you haven't got the time, but B, you don't have the skill set, or you can do it, but you do it badly. So, I would like to see. I know I'm buggering off anyway, so it doesn't bother me, but. I would like to see you really pushing the boundaries on this and getting it recognised within your universities at the highest level. It's not just about you guys here recognising it; it's getting it recognised at a high level.
Yeah, I think one of the things that was saddest was I went to Strathclyde to see Bruce and Jim about modern apprenticeships, and they had an AV technician they were putting through a modern apprenticeship, and he was doing the InfoComm track towards hopefully towards CTS, and they had an internal person ran their modern apprenticeship scheme. They weren't buying an off-the-shelf one from one of these companies like QA or whoever. They'd actually, if you like, they'd home brewed it. But even in that home brewing process, they still had to get whatever the elements were recognised by the Scottish Qualifications Authority to make sure it sat at a certain level. And one of the saddest things was they seemed to be having no luck whatsoever in getting the InfoComm track to CTS recognised in any way. So the guy was having to go off and do other stuff to meet the requirements of the modern apprenticeship, whereas actually the InfoComm stuff was much more relevant to what he was doing, and I think that was just really bad, and it's a difficulty for us. Anyone else?
I think as well, Nigel, I think it's on some of the job description Jim put out. When we're rewriting job descriptions and person specifications now, we are looking at saying, at the moment, we will say CTS is a desirable, but must be, especially for a technician position, to say it's not an essential yet, it's a desirable, but you must work at gaining it within 1 year of employment. We can't do it fully yet because it's not quite big enough within the university, but that is a line that we are going down to make sure that when we get the people in, that they've got the right qualifications and the right attributes as an individual. So it is a way that we're looking at doing it.
Okay, so lots of food for thought there, lots of food for thought for the new executive and whoever it is that's taken over from me.
No idea.
He's no idea, so there you go. But I'm sure there will be someone, and all I would say to them is, good luck. And I've certainly found it fun. It's been fun working on the scheme. I think it's been a good relationship with Chris and Sarah and Ben at InfoComm. And I am only glad at my first executive face-to-face meeting when we're going to be discussing InfoComm, I just couldn't sleep that night. And when we went to the meeting in the morning, I said, I've had a really great idea. Let's tell InfoComm we want all to be members and give us it for a discount. And well, here we are. So that was a worthwhile sleepless night. But also just to say, to whoever it is, remember the ex-treasurer said there's money left. So thank you very much. I want to say a wee bit more. Right, hang on a minute. I just wanted to say, now we've got that out of the way, just a wee bit more, because I didn't get a chance to say anything last night. This is my last SCOMS conference. I tried long and hard to remember where the first one was and when it was, but it's that long ago, I couldn't remember. But it's certainly more than 15 years ago. But the one thing I did remember was at that conference turning up as a newbie, of which there are several here today, and being taken under the wing of Jim Bain, who's still here, from Queen Margaret, from Duncan, from Heriot Watt, and Andy Medvin at that time from Napier. Who looked after me for the whole period, and the first night in the bar grabbed me and took me aside at one point and said, right, Jim, you see, it's like this. You see that guy down there in the corner? That's Chris O'Hagan. And if he comes near you, hide and just go to the loo or anything, but just don't get cornered by him. And that was some of the best advice I ever had. But it just shows you that even back then, old hands looked after newbies. And it has been, I think, one of the most enjoyable parts of my time in my job, and it is the thing that I will absolutely miss most when I go. I have met great friends, and I think that is the key thing. Colleagues turn into friends, and sort of virtually turned into family at the end of that. It is that sort of organisation. And people have come and gone. If you look back at the time of Anne Mumford and Shona and all the others, but there comes a time for the old grey-haired ones to bugger off and leave the organisation in good hands. And having been on the executive for 2 years, I am sure the organisation is in good hands. But what it needs is it needs new people coming through with new ideas and younger people and contributing. And I was really chuffed to see so many people here for the first time, and also to see our membership going up to 100 members. So I think that is a real good time, as it said on the cake, to go 100 not out and leave the field while you're up. So I wish the organisation well. I am sure it will flourish in the future under the new executive, and I'm sure it won't be long before some of the people here for the first time are contributing and joining the executives. And a great organisation. Before I burst into tears, I will miss you all, but thank you for your friendship.